once again with Jackie Valldejuli Kearns.
Thank you, David. Wonderful to be here.
We have our phones in our hands. We're not being rude. We're going to do the Facebook Live. So refresh your screen. We're sharing. Please give us comments on Facebook Live. We're going to be watching the comments, answering questions, any questions you have for Jackie as we talk about. You got it? You shared it?
Shared a page?
No, you're going to do share. Yeah, share to story, right? Oh no. We need help. Tommy, the fact checker.
Share to.
She's going to do it, right? We tried to do it on there, but please send us your comments. Tommy's going to put up the comments on here for any questions. So, Jackie, my first question for you is, how is your stress level as compared to last week? A week ago today?
It's actually a little bit higher, my stress, as far as the inauguration, because you brought up a lot that there's this segment of society that doesn't want to accept the results, and that it can continue to be violent. And I said no, and I was thinking, no, we took care of the situation at the Capitol the day they were counting votes. But I've been talking to friends, and I actually spoke to someone who's a very good friend of mine who thinks similar to me, but her sister is married to someone who follows QAnon. And this is a family that I really respect. And this gentleman is a family man, but he's telling his wife, who doesn't agree with him, that on January 20th, Donald Trump will continue to be president because things are going to happen that you and I, people like you and I, who are mainstream, if you will, don't know about, but that's being planned by
whoever.
I don't know how the radical right, domestic terrorists. So it came to mind that, remember before the Capitol, we had a serious cybersecurity breach, like many government agencies and departments. We don't even know how bad it was. The government doesn't want to tell us.
And the Trump administration kind of like poo-pooed it.
They whitewashed it. They didn't really talk about it. They don't really talk about anything. They still haven't come out with I don't think anything about the Capitol. And so my friend and I were talking, well, maybe they're going to use, maybe January 20th, there could be a blackout. And I don't want to get people worried, but that is one way that we could, because we already have that vulnerability. Russia has already breached our cybersecurity protocols, security controls. How do we know that they're not going to affect our grid, our electrical grid, or shut down the internet, stop communications? I hope none of that comes to fruition. But yeah, I'm more concerned now because I've been doing a little more. I truly believe that there was serious fraud, that bring them into the fold. Your question last week. And I think that's just so important right now.
So it's interesting that you say that, because we go to church together, and I am active in a couple of the groups of the church and men's groups. And there are people that talk about Q and things that are going on. And it was interesting because of that, and because of it, I listened to a podcast called Reply All, and it's kind of a nerd computer podcast. And they did a big thing on QAnon and who they think it was and how it works. And I really learned a lot about that. And then also, like, I heard people, that I respect and know that talk about Q and what did Q post and about this stuff. And I find it very interesting because it's kind of like, mainstream media is catching up on what I've known for a couple of years, these people who follow and he kind of, they call them drops. And Q drops these like cryptic, statements.
Right.
And it's
they live for it. They live for it. For them, they feel like they're on the inside circle of information.
Exactly. It's interesting you say it, because that's what I was going to ask. Is like, it's almost like addictive, right? It's almost like if we have, if you have religion, right? I remember in college, a professor saying, like, whether religion is true or not, there's theories that we as humans would just create religion. We would create God, that our minds need it. It's a construct that we need to live what we
Yes.
view as constructive lives and put order. You know, a child dies, and like, what does that mean? And am I going to see the child in the afterlife? And like, almost like we have these like things that we have to do just to make ourselves inherent need. And Q kind of fits that. So here's these people who like don't like the way the world's going, and then it's like, and maybe it's so comforting that there's like these hidden forces that are going to like arrest Biden, you know, on the day of the inauguration. I saw something the other day where there was some rumors that there's going to be articles of impeachment placed on Biden on the 20th.
Yes.
And it's all, you know, it's interesting because it's all nonsense. But it does go to like, how do you, it's almost like
put some sense in these people. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like where do you go that this idea of and then it's interesting because I want to segue into something that I heard from somebody. So I have two questions for you. We didn't talk about this, but I was talking to an AP reporter, and he was talking about how Latin America, like this looks like a Latin American election. You're from Latin America.
I'm half. My mom is from Bolivia.
But your roots are in Bolivia.
Yeah.
And I know you're a student of history of Bolivia. You know that you know what's going on in Bolivia. And he was very much like, I've seen this before, the trying to illegitimize an election, storming the Capitol with violence, banning people from social media, or banning political parties, banning candidates. And he was like, this all ends badly. Right, in those countries. He's like, I've never seen a politician or a political party that was banned that didn't come back stronger. And he gave examples. I think Evo was one of them that was a banned individual. So I kind of wanted to see if you see this through the lens of a Latin American, that there is a feeling of a Latin American democratic struggle here.
Oh, absolutely. You can make that analogy. I have also thought a lot about suppression of the First Amendment rights. Is it right that Amazon stopped providing web services to Parler, which in effect shut them down? And this morning on NPR, they were saying, okay, there's some people that were doing or communicating evil thoughts, terrible plans for our elected officials, but there's a lot of people using Parler that were using it as a regular social media platform to communicate with their friends. And the end of the discussion is that this Congress is going to have to make some more specific rules around that, because for the last 30 years, it's been very hands off with tech companies and putting some rules around how they can operate. And now it's not going to be that way anymore. And I think hopefully now that the Democrats are united and we have the power, they can make some rules where we're not suppressing freedom of speech, but we're also preventing people from doing what they did in the Capitol last week.
It's interesting because I'll tell you, as a lawyer, I really am concerned about, like I understand why we did it. And I don't think we can like downplay that, like a policeman was murdered on the Capitol steps. Like, it's really bad.
And another policemen were very hurt too. Yeah. They didn't die.
I keep saying, it's funny. Every time I say that, someone corrects me. There's like 5 people died, but just that video, that guy getting drugged down the steps and beaten to death by our fellow Americans, like, it really is mind blowing. So I get the severity of it. I get the urgency of it. But as a lawyer, I'm very concerned. Like, I want the competition of ideas. And it's almost like the way that the lens I look at this through, Jackie, is almost like the competition for ideas has become warped somehow.
Yes.
Where like normal conversations, like the normal back and forth that people have is broken down. And so like, if you believe in Q, you believe there are these forces, you believe that there's that the Democrats have this huge child molestation ring. And you have like, once you believe that, like, how, it kind of goes back to that whole question of like, how do we get back from there back to normality?
We need education.
But I mean, how are you going to educate a 40-year-old?
Well, maybe not them, but their children, because it's one thing for a middle-aged or person or older to have those thoughts, and somehow we have to figure a way to communicate with them reality. because unfortunately they've been led astray by Trump. Trump has been telling them for months that he won the election, that it was stolen from him, and there have been Congress people that have been perpetuating.
And he's never going to stop
these
saying
lies.
that.
No.
That's one of the things too. Is it would be one thing if there was a come to Jesus moment where Trump said, "Guys, it's over, man. Like we tried our best. It's time to move on."
Yeah,
that's not what Trump's saying. Trump's saying, "I know why you're upset. This was stolen from us."
And now that he's lost absolutely everything, not only has he lost the election, a lot of goodwill that he gained from whatever he did while he was in office, but now not only is he going to be investigated and have charges for the emollients clause, but now he's under investigation. Did he cause or partially responsible for the ransacking of the Capitol, for the death of,
and that's when you get into scary stuff, Jackie, where it's like
the golf tournament money, his pocket. And I don't think he values anything more than his pocketbook, and now that's being seriously affected. So there is no way that he's going to have a come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, he's not going to back down. And and that's one thing that's concerning to me is you talk about speech again, not to get too much into like First Amendment stuff, but it's like, I don't think anyone, well, maybe there's some really hardcore Republicans, but I don't think anyone is against punishing the people that desecrated the Capitol and did stuff. I mean, we
talked about that last week too, and the
punishment that's going to come from that.
They're
but
investigating.
When you go to the next level of going after the speech that led to that, like going after Trump and saying you said words that caused people to kill a police officer, that gets to, you're getting into pretty like troubling area to me, right? That someone's thoughts and words can be held against them for a murder. I don't know how we're going to draw the line where we've never had somebody like Trump who is willing to go to this level to incite this level of violence
for his personal benefit
in American history. I mean, it's like I'm not
240 years of our great country.
And it's interesting because I saw something the other day, Jackie, like talking about stress level. Someone said, like, we've had one true test of our democracy. And that was the civil. It was basically over slavery. And it was like, and that resulted in a civil war. Like, this is our second great test. What is it going to look like? And it's very interesting to me because I have talked a lot, a couple shows with different people saying, it's, people who are politically in the know, like you, that are thoughtful students of history. And I would say to them, like, at what level do we have, like, you have to just let this go, right? We have to, you can't just throw everyone in jail. And I got to tell you something. I got some pushback from people, Republicans, saying, no, you throw them all in jail. Like, we can't have reconciliation until we have accountability and then figure this out. And I'm a little worried that if we just throw everyone in jail and we kick everyone off of social media and we shame everybody, I worry it's going to radicalize people further. That's my concern. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. I think one thing that is helpful is that a lot of huge companies are coming out and saying we're not supporting politicians. We're not going to give hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of support to politicians that had anything to do with the Capitol invasion, because money in this world is what makes it turn around. And if that radical right isn't receiving funds, it's harder for them to continue fighting. The gentleman, I shouldn't say, the psycho radical right guy with the horns who's in jail now.
He's a Q guy.
He's a Q guy. Apparently he only eats organic food. And so he's starving himself in jail.
Yeah, I heard he's on a hunger strike.
To what end? I'm not sure. To get out. But if he led the charge online as well. He's a very active member in those groups. He even has like a special title among the QAnon people. If they're not provided the funds to continue, then that will negatively affect them. I think that can slow them down.
So it's interesting you say that because Tommy, right before we got on, Tommy, our fact checker, was showing me some media pieces where I guess DC prosecutors are alleging that that some of the protest, some of the mob was intent on kidnapping and killing congressmen.
Yes.
I mean, that's
yes, so
I haven't read the indictment, but that's what the news is reporting, that they were. And you see the pictures of the people with the restraints,
zip ties,
the zip ties and everything. But it was interesting because another reporter I was talking to,
I don't think we can emphasize that enough, Dave, that our senators and Congress people
were in real danger.
Were steps away from being hostages, hurt physically, possibly killed. And if it wasn't for the quick thinking of many police, specifically Officer Eugene Goodman, you might have seen that video where he ran up the stairs. He saw that the door to the Senate was open, completely unprotected. He pushed the lead of the protesters to distract him. Hey, come follow, chase me, and then ran opposite way. And the whole mob went after the officer to a room full of police.
Yeah.
I mean, I get chills just telling the story, and I've talked to folks about it. A lot of friends who hadn't even heard about this. It's this close.
Yeah.
Pelosi was this close. Pence, they were looking for Pelosi.
They wanted
and
Pence.
They wanted both.
It's interesting you say it, because I thought about a moment. I remember reading a book, and I think it was the Alexander Hamilton book. I can't remember what's the author's name that wrote that. Fact checker Tommy, who wrote the book that led to the musical.
Not Goodwin Kearns.
No.
Okay.
But
possibly relation to my husband.
Is that right? In the book, shout out to John Kearns, best husband in America. And he has the trophy to prove it.
He sure does.
In the book, there's a scene where the American soldiers, the revolutionary soldiers, aren't being paid, and it's this kind of unruly mob, and it's going really bad. And George Washington shows up in front of the troops, and he kind of just confronts the troops and is like, "This is how it's going to be," and puts order to everything. And I remember like the way that he told
Ron Chernow.
Ron Chernow's book, yes, exactly, which I'd highly recommend to anybody. I haven't even seen the musical, and we read the book for a book club, and I wasn't interested in it. And it's one of the best history books I've ever read. And this is a scene from it where George Washington, the general, has to confront the troops who haven't been paid, who aren't going home. They're getting their ass kicked in the war.
Yeah.
And as a man, he stood up in front of them and was like, "You got to trust me. This is how it's going to be. Shut up, sit down, do your job.
We got to."
Exactly. And he just put order to a situation. And it was interesting because it was that was kind of one of the things that made the legend of Washington, right? He kept the country together. And I swear, I thought about this and I was like, if Pelosi had confronted that mob, we would have seen Pelosi torn limb from limb. I really believe that they would have murdered her.
Absolutely.
And I really that's a dark point in our history when you think about that. When you have mob willing, I mean, again, I just go back to, I'm still digesting that cop being killed the way that he was killed. Which leads me to a question. It's like, you're from DC.
I'm sorry, I couldn't even finish watching that video. Yeah. I saw a second of it. I was like, I can't watch it.
Do they have guns? I mean, why couldn't they shoot their way out?
Police, at least when I was growing up there, are the only ones allowed to carry guns.
No, but at the Capitol Police, why did they?
It seems like no one was. Well, they did shoot the one lady through the window.
I know, but when that guy's getting pulled down the stairs to get beat to death, where you see the other police officers, why are they not just opening fire? Absolutely. It was really weird.
I mentioned that in our talk last week. Yeah. Why weren't they shooting the mob? There should have been some guns
shooting the mob.
Yeah, I mean, when they're invading the Capitol and they're putting people's lives in danger, that is time to shoot. Time to scare people. Shoot the kneecaps first, and if they don't stop, then you go up a little higher. But yeah, people in America have been shot for a lot less.
Yeah, we know that. So I need to really grab the wheel of this conversation because we're not a national news show.
No.
And I did this because this all started with a personal question about where your stress level is, and I want to bring it local. And the way that I want to bring it local, and then really what, here we are at Miami Community Newspapers, the hub of local community news in South Florida. Our elected representatives, many of them, voted against the legitimacy of the election.
Certifying the election.
Tell me about how did you feel when you saw that? What does that mean to you?
Completely disgusted. I've thought about it many times over, and I just, in my mind, I can think from different angles and different perspectives, and I still, to this day, a week and 2 days later, cannot fathom any explanation as to why, after the Capitol was invaded.
Yeah, this vote was after the night of.
You can not certify the votes. So you agree with the mob? You agree that the Capitol, our holy halls of Congress and democracy, should be invaded? There's no explanation. And I'm still waiting to hear an explanation from our elected officials.
So I want to draw an analogy for you. In watching this, if I was one of the Republican leaders, I think one of the ways that I would look at this is, about what happened at Penn State University with was it Sandusky fact checker? Is that his name? Sandusky?
Yeah, that was maybe 10 years ago or so. It was awful.
He was molesting children in the facilities of Penn State football. And I remember there being a moment about the cover up in the organization. And I remember thinking to myself, like, there's just these moments, like if I saw a grown man sexually abusing a child in a shower, like that's the end of it, right? Like I'm either going to fight that. Well, first of all, I'm going to stop it, whatever means necessary. Call the police, blow it up. Like you wouldn't even think twice. Like, whoa, we got to keep this quiet. So there are people that do that, and I remember like having trouble identifying with the guy that made the decision. Like, well, listen, it's Sandusky. He's one of us. Let's cover this up. How does that apply? Like when I think about that, where like it's such an opportunity for the Republicans, like I see it more as an opportunity just to say, like, you know what, we messed up. Let's take the party in a new direction. And the Republicans do not seem to be embracing that opportunity.
The closest they've gotten to it is Mitch McConnell saying, I still haven't decided if I'm going to impeach him or not. So at least he's saying that there is some merit to impeaching him. That's the closest the Republicans have gotten from a leadership perspective to saying, besides the 10 or 15 senators, I heard that possibly there's up to 20 Republican senators. But besides Mitt Romney and a handful of others, Mitch McConnell saying that, hey, I haven't decided, that's pretty powerful. However, very little bit too subtle.
But that's not giving direction.
No,
I can see like someone would grab hold of this and just say,
they're still scared of Trump.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with this. Like, why wouldn't there be a national thing of just some Republicans saying, like, you know what? Here's what we're going to do.
We messed up.
Trump brought a lot of strong qualities. We want conservative judges. We want limited government. We want free enterprise. And just
tax the poor and tax less the rich. Yes.
Tax less. And but articulate that in a way. It's like, and we're going to do that without the white supremacy.
Without the KKK, the Nazis.
This other stuff. Without the Nazi stuff. And we're good. This is what our party is. And you're either with us or you're not. And I feel like it's a defining moment, and they're not rising to the occasion.
Not at all, because they want that base. They know that the Democrats aren't going to vote for them, and they need that base to stay in power. And even though in the heart of hearts they think they know it's wrong, they don't want to upset the mob anymore, and they're hoping for their vote next go around, next election season. There is no other explanation for it.
So look at our local politicians: that Mario Diaz-Balart, Carlos Jimenez, which surprised some people that he did it,
and Elvira.
And did Elvira do it? Yeah, Elvira, of course she did. Yeah, and Rick Scott, not Marco Rubio, but Rick Scott did it.
Well, Elvira, she wasn't there for the certifying the vote.
That's what I thought.
But she was there for the impeachment vote.
And but she didn't vote. But the idea is, and Maria Salazar, was she not? I know she was there.
Well, that's who I'm referring to.
Oh, okay, Maria Salazar. But there's another one. But anyways, I don't know if that was it. But what is the fallout for them? Like what's the feeling in Miami-Dade? Is I have a feeling they did it because their supporters reached out to them and said, I want you to vote to decertify.
I don't know anyone in Miami who supports the mob that invaded the Capitol. I know people who wish Trump would have won. I have Republican friends that agreed with a lot of Trump's policies, but none of them have said, "Oh, it was the election was stolen from us. We can't accept Biden." No, they're saying, "Yeah, it's Biden won, and hopefully in 4 years we can do better." Or what normal, just like we had to bite the bullet when Trump won, and we were in shock for 6 months. But we just kept saying 2020, 2020, 2020.
And you saw how constructive it was. Now, the problem is, and we got to wrap this up, but that again, like I want to talk to you next week about, we really need some thought leaders on, again, how you bring people in the fold. I mean, I got to tell you something as a lawyer.
Yeah.
One of the things I see, one of the biggest mistakes you can do to me in life is just write people off. Just not just say like, that's a bad person, or that's a bad group of people, or that's not someone I'm going to deal with. And, I think it's much more constructive to say, like, I will engage with you, but here's the rules of engagement. Here's how we're going to do this. We know that even within our own family, sometimes you have to do that. Within businesses, you have to do that. You have to set the rules, but it's always better to keep the rules of communication. Like, the worst thing for a relationship is for me to say, Jackie, you're always like this. That's who you are. And like, you give no room for growth. You give no room for reconciliation. And I want you to think about this next week, because when's the inauguration?
The 20th.
What day's the 20th? Fact checker, Tommy.
Fact checker.
Killing me, man.
That's 13th. So that'll be
Today's
next
the
Wednesday.
15th in 5 days.
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, we'll be after that, and we can kind of talk about it. It's interesting because I have a reporter friend who's going up there, and he has 2 bodyguards.
Oof.
2 bodyguards.
Just
He's
to
wearing
protect him.
Kevlar. And it was interesting because, like, in talking with him,
Smart guy.
he's a athletic guy, former football player, and he was telling me, he's like, no, I know if that mob can get hold of me, like, they will kill me, right? I mean, that's the mentality. And to think about, in the capital of the free world, here's somebody thinking to themselves, it just doesn't matter who it is, just an American is thinking, I will be torn limb from limb by a mob if I take a wrong turn in DC this week. And that really was sobering for me to hear him. Not that he's fearful. The guy's a complete badass. He's not, but he's just like, this is what we're doing to protect ourselves. Every one of us is getting 2 bodyguards, unarmed, which is, again, because of DC. It's an interesting problem. They're unarmed, or at least they say they're going to be unarmed. We'll see. So we'll talk about it. I'm sorry if this was a little bit of a depressing show, but I think it's important to focus on, you got to talk about the reality. But I also want us to start talking about the healing.
Yes. How can we bring folks into the fold? How can we start getting folks to see reality, see past Trump a little bit, at least, and that we are one country. We all want the betterment, the quality of life for all fellow Americans and citizens and residents of our country. And we can't have this group that they're everywhere. They're all over the country. Multitudes are willing to use violence to get their way, and that's not, our country wasn't based on
some people would argue with you about that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not in 2021.
We will see you next week. We'll see you here next week. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Jackie Valldejuli Kearns. We will see you next week. Have a great weekend, Miami.